Have you ever heard a coach tell you don't have sex before your big game? Save your energy, protect your edge? Well, a lot of coaches have said it and most athletes just believe them. But what if that advice is completely wrong? I'm Dr. Rena Malik, urologist and pelvic surgeon, and today we're talking about the science behind sex or even masturbation before a big performance. Now, the belief that sexual activity or any type of sex before competition actually hurts performance has been around for generations. Many coaches and trainers have repeated it. It even goes as far back as ancient Greek or Roman times, where it was thought that abstinence would lead to sexual frustration and allow guys to be more aggressive, leading to a better performance on the competition field. But that's not science, it's anecdote. And the reality is athletes of all types, boxers, runners, volleyball players, could be abstaining for weeks around competition, and that can have significant impacts on your psychology and your relationship. So the question is, does science actually support any of this? Before I get into the research, I want to take a minute just to tell you about something I created specifically for you, my erectile mastery course. As a urologist, erectile dysfunction is one of the most common things that I see in my practice. And I know how much it affects not just your physical health, but your confidence, your relationship, and your quality of life. This course gives you everything I walk my own patients through. The science behind erections, the real causes of erectile dysfunction, lifestyle changes that actually make a difference, and when and how to seek treatment. So if you've been struggling with this or you just want to learn more, check it out today at learn.renamalikmd.com/erectile mastery. So in 2022, a meta-analysis of 9 studies of over 134 participants found that pre-exercise sexual activity, no matter when you did it or how soon you did it before the performance, didn't affect performance, looking at aerobic capacity, muscular strength, or power output. However, the studies have shown mixed results when looking at sexual activities within that first 2 hours before the athletic performance. So 2026 brings us some new science. A new study looked at more deeply at exactly what happens if men have sex within 30 minutes of athletic performance, and also better understand what's going on in the physiology, not just performance metrics. So they recruited 21 well-trained male athletes that include basketball players, volleyball players, long-distance runners, boxers, judokas, and people who competed at regional, national, and international levels. They were on average 22 years old, and they had about 8 years of serious training. Each of these athletes came in twice, 1 week apart, to serve as their own control at the same time of day. On one of the visits, they masturbated, and on the other visit, they abstained for 7 days prior to the activity. And which one went first was randomized. This is what they call a crossover design. It's basically a way to control for variables like learning effects or maybe day-to-day fluctuations. So they also wanted to make sure everyone was having a very similar psychological experience. So the participants in the sex group watched a 15-minute pornographic video. They then masturbated to orgasm in a private room. Then they watched a 15-minute neutral documentary to allow their bodies to settle. Exercise started about 30 minutes after the orgasm. Now the abstinence group watched the same neutral documentary for 15 minutes under identical lab conditions, even down to the temperature and the humidity in the room. But of course, there was no sexual stimulation or erotic film. Both groups completed 2 performance tests: an incremental cycling test where they pedaled basically at increasing intensity until they hit exhaustion, and an isometric hand grip strength test. And they measured a number of factors. They looked at how long they could keep going, their power, their heart rate, their blood lactate levels, and how hard they felt they were working. They also took other blood levels. They took some blood samples immediately after the exercise to measure muscle damage markers, inflammatory markers, and hormones, specifically testosterone and cortisol. So when looking at endurance specifically, athletes who had engaged in masturbation lasted about 3.2% longer on the cycling test, had a higher heart rate, and increased average hand grip strength compared to the day that they didn't. And they didn't really think there was a difference in how hard they were working on both events. In terms of hormones, both testosterone and cortisol were elevated in the masturbation group. These were really small to moderate effect sizes, but there was a difference. And the researchers basically looked at this as the body is mobilizing resources and getting ready. And they called this eustress or good stress, not the kind of hormonal disruption that's actually negative for you. They saw no difference in inflammatory biomarkers or muscle damage markers. Things like CRP or IL-6, there was no significant change. The body essentially was not inflamed or in a state of negative stress. Bottom line, the guys who masturbated saw very small improvements in endurance and strength, with some sign that maybe their nervous system and hormonal system were activated, and no negative downstream downstream effects. So the researchers concluded that masturbating 30 minutes before exercise did not impair athletic performance and may even offer a small benefit. So what's actually happening in the body that would produce this when you're having sexual stimulation? Well, when you're aroused, your body activates the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight system. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure rises slightly, and your body releases catecholamines. It's almost basically like when you're having a warm-up or a moderate aerobic exertion. Then after orgasm, your parasympathetic nervous system takes over your rest and digest state. So this is what's happening. You have activation, then recovery. And the assumption based on this study is that by the time 30 minutes have passed, your body has been through that entire cycle, and it's sort of like a primed but recovered state going into exercise. And again, orgasm also releases dopamine and other endorphins that affect mood and motivation and even pain perception. You might feel more confident, more settled, more focused. There's even some men who experience post-nut clarity. And I've talked about that before on this channel, so check out that video. Basically, there may be potentially some benefit. Now, of course, this data is limited. This study included only young men who were already very active, and you can't extrapolate that this would also occur in women, although probably likely, or with partnered intercourse. So what should you take away from this? If you're an athlete who has been told, hey, no sex, no masturbation before competition, you can let that worry go. The evidence does not support the idea that this is going to hurt you or hurt your performance. If anything, the data may trend in the other direction. However, guys, at the end of the day, you know your body. And some research theorized that maybe athletic performance improves to some point as arousal increases, but only up to a point. Beyond that, too much arousal may actually hurt performance. Well, this means that for some people, sex before competition might improve performance, while others, it may actually hurt performance. Figure it out for yourself under low stakes, like at a practice, not a big performance, before condemning yourself to abstinence. Also, one caveat, if you're having sex right before competition, I mean minutes before, there is some evidence that these acute changes in your heart rate might affect your recovery capacity in the short term. So timing might matter a little bit. But what I tell all my patients and anyone who asks me is really stick to your normal routine. Because if you normally have sex every day and you break that habit, it might make you feel off, distracted, or mentally out of sorts. And that psychological disruption can absolutely affect your performance. And if you're one of those guys who gets post-nut clarity, intimacy before competition might actually leave you feeling grounded and mentally sharp. Bottom line, know your body, protect your routine, and don't let an outdated myth be the source of your pre-game stress. If you guys like that content, make sure to subscribe. And as always, remember to take care of yourself because you're worth it.